Welcome back, my friends, to the DerateTheHate.com podcast. I am Wilt from wiltsworld.com, and this is going to be episode 14 of the Derate the Hate podcast. And today is part 3 of our mini-series dedicated to the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And if you haven't had a chance, step back and listen to episodes 12 and episodes 13, where we discuss the first 3 habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people. First habit, be proactive, where in episode 12, we discuss the habit of being responsible, able to choose our response. And then in episode 13, we dive into habits 2 and 3, which are leadership and management habits, where habit 2 is begin with the end in mind, and habit 3 is put first things first. So if you haven't had a chance, like I said, step back, listen to episodes 12 and 13 of the Derate the Hate podcast, where we go into habits 1 through 3 of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This episode 14, we're going to talk about habits 4 and 5. And actually, I'd be remiss without actually saying it, but habits 4 and 5 are something that is so far out of place in so many realms that mean so much today, and where I as soon as I say it, you're gonna instantly figure it out. But habit 4 is think win-win, and habit 5 is seek first to understand and then to be understood. Now, I don't think there's any greater example at this time in history and at this time in our lives of the complete failure of these 2 habits than what we're seeing in our political stage in modern times. It's, think win-win is an opportunity for 2 parties, whether it be individuals or, say, political parties. It's an opportunity for 2 parties to get together and try to come together and come to certain terms with a win-win mentality. And what do I mean by that? You have to work for a win on both sides of a situation or both sides of a negotiation, because if you go for win-lose or lose-win, as Dr. Covey explains in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, obviously one party or the other is always coming out with the short end of the stick. So we have to think in terms of a win-win. What does my side want? What does your side want? How do we come to terms where we are both on a winning side of the issue? And this isn't nearly as hard as you would think, and we will get into this in greater detail. And I do not want the Derate the Hate podcast to be about politics, but this is something that we will obviously discuss in greater detail in coming episodes. But when 2 parties need to come together to finish a negotiation, I don't care if it's a business deal, if it's a personal relationship matter, if it's a political agenda issue, the end terms have to be a win-win or no deal. And the what we're seeing so often nowadays on the political stage is a whole bunch of political theater and a whole bunch of nastiness that is really accomplishing nothing. But what it does is it pits the 2 parties against each other, and in the political realm, it pits the constituents against each other because of the political theater aspect of it. But just think about the whether it be a time when you've bought a car, or you've bought an appliance, or you've bought or you've had to negotiate any kind of a deal. When you go into that deal, you're obviously wanting to win. The other party obviously wants to win. And if you can't go for a win-win, somebody's going to come out the loser. So whether it be you, the lose-win mentality, or whether it be them, the win-lose mentality, somebody loses. So in habit 4, Dr. Covey talks about the concept of win-win and how to get to the win-win mentality. You have to work for a win-win or go for option 3, which is a win-win, no deal, where you say, if we sit down and we talk and we can come to terms where I win and you win, that's great. But if we cannot come to terms where I win and you win, then maybe there's no deal and we can just agree to disagree and move on amicably. Like I said, in the modern political stage, there's way too much political theater. There's way too much of, things that I'm not going to get into here. But there's all too little of the concept of win-win. So win-win has got to be a part of any negotiation where you're going to be effective, where you're going to be successful. Because if you go for the win-lose, again, the other party is going to have animosity. If you go for the lose-win and you turn yourself into a martyr, you're just going to go away feeling bad, and you've lost, they've won, they've taken you to the cleaners. It's not the effective, it's not the efficient, it's not the best thing to do. So, habit 4 is go for the win-win. Habit 5 is seek first to understand and then be understood. Now, this is a very big part of the think win-win mentality, because if I walk into a negotiation, whether it be with an employee that reports to me or my boss or somebody that I'm looking to negotiate a deal with, and I sit down with them and I just start speaking my opinion, I don't even try to figure out what they're going for. The first thing I do is just bombard them like a bull in a china shop with my opinions and what I want and how I feel. They've automatically shut down. They do not even hear what I am saying. They are not listening. They are not absorbing the opinion that I'm trying to present. The only thing that they are doing is mentally in their mind trying to figure out how they're going to respond and how they are going to try to present their point to you. Nothing's being accomplished. Nothing's being heard. We are now in a power struggle for who's going to understand who, and neither party is going to come out understanding the other party. So what we need to do to be effective, again, the 7 habits of highly effective people, as Dr. Covey states it, seek first to understand and then be understood. So it's better to go into that negotiation and say, let me listen to your point. Let me listen to what you have to say. And before I am going to speak, before I am going to start talking from my perspective, I want to make sure that you know that I know what your point is. I understand where you are coming from before I ever try to present what I am trying to get out of this negotiation, what I am trying to go for in this disagreement or this contract negotiation or this sale or pleading my case. And once I do that, once I take myself out of the position of trying to bombard that other party with what I want them to understand, I seek first to understand what their point of view is, and then after I truly understand, and I make a point of making sure they know that I understand, then I try to make my point. This does a couple things. It takes the stress off me in this negotiation, because now I'm not trying to rush through what I'm trying to say. I am truly sitting there and making sure I understand what their point is before I try to present my point of view. They know that I respect them enough to gain an understanding of what their position is, and we can both go into this negotiation with a solid understanding at that point of what each other wants. And these two, like I said, habit 4, think win-win. How do I truly understand, and how can I truly come up with a win-win mentality if I don't first understand what that other party wants? How can I first truly get to a win-win mentality if I don't even know what their position is and truly understand their position? I already know what my position is. I know how I win out of this deal. But how can I really figure out how the other party wins if I don't first understand what they are looking for? So habits 4 and 5, think win-win and seek first to understand and then to be understood, are obviously very, very important habits to maintain if you're going to be an effective person, if you're going to be a person that's going to accomplish great things in life. Because when it comes to negotiating anything, I don't care whether it's business, I don't care whether it's personal, I don't care whether it's a relationship, marriage, in-laws, whatever the case may be, it is so very, very important in all negotiating tactics, all relationship tactics, to think win-win and seek first to understand, then to be understood, is how you get there, how you get to that win-win mentality. And like I said, everything that's going on in the world today is so incredibly toxic because far too many people have forgotten the win-win mentality, and it's always me against you. I've got to get my way. I'm not sure, or I don't care, or I don't want to listen to what your way is. And people become vulnerable because they don't want to listen to what the other person has to say. I don't want to know your position because I don't want to be swayed out of my win. I want to have what I want. I do not want to listen to what you want. And then that is just a recipe for a whole bunch of toxic that we see every single day in society and in the news and most of all in politics. And if we don't get back to the think win-win mentality, which comes first by seeking to understand the other side, we will never get anywhere, and we will continue to see lots and lots of bad in everything that we're seeing nowadays. So there is no better way and no better habits in the deratethehate.com concept, bettering the world one attitude at a time, than to think win-win by first seeking to understand and then to be understood. So with that, we'll wrap up the abridged version of Habits 4 and 5, again from Dr. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and we will dive right into this week's good news or feel-good story, because like I say in every episode, there's a whole lot of doom and gloom, and this one is not necessarily recent, but it is certainly a feel-good story, and it stood out to me in my reading this week, so I wanted to share it with all of you because good news and good values are timeless. There's never been a more important time in our lives to recognize people with good values, and this story comes from July of 1950, where a cleaning lady at a bank in Syracuse, New York, was on her 4th night of work, and on her 4th night, she shows up to clean the bank, and there behind the teller cage on the floor are 4 neatly stacked stacks of money, and equaling about $40,000. Now, Mary Sikowski, the cleaning lady, had just started this job this week, making $18 a week. So for all those who don't want to do the math, that's less than $1,000 a year. And she just finds $40,000 laying on the floor. And what does she do? She sticks it in a paper bag. She knows she's got to protect it. She's going to turn it in the next day. And she said she'd never been more frightened in her entire life. She's protecting it like like there's nothing else that she's ever protected before. And she takes it home, shows her husband, shows her kids, with the intention of giving it back the next day. And she said every time the dog barked, every time the floor creaked, anytime something happened, she was just nervous, sweating bullets, and couldn't wait, couldn't get rid of the money soon enough. So they returned it the next day, or she told her boss, she told the bank manager, she returned the money. They gave her a $150 reward for returning the money. They put her picture in the newspaper. They actually put her picture in some national American news weekly, something like that. But like I said, good values are timeless. Back then there's no security cameras, there's no nothing. She could have walked away with the money, and probably nobody, until they counted the money and whatever. The fact is like I've said before in this podcast, character is doing the right thing when nobody is looking. And Mary Sikowski, July 1950, found 40 times her yearly salary laying on the floor and on her fourth day of work, and she knew exactly what she had to do. She returned the money, and that is a phenomenal feat by anybody's standards. That is good character. That's a good deed. That's a beautiful thing, and she obviously has a beautiful soul with beautiful values. So, again, beautiful values are timeless, and way to go, Mary Sikowski. I don't know if you're still with us, but in 1950, you absolutely did the right thing. Amazing job, great job, and hopefully there's a lot of people that saw that story back in 1950 and learned something from it. So, and hopefully there's some people that listen to this podcast and learn something from it today. So, with that, I'm going to wrap up this week's D-Rate the Hate podcast, like I always do. And when you can get back out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and ultimately remember, it's up to you to make each and every single day the day that you want it to be. Until next week, and next week we're going to wrap up our little mini-series on the Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But until next week, we'll catch you then. Thank you very much.